Have you ever wondered what really goes into the price of something? It seems like it should be simple, but it's actually one of the trickiest questions in business. Today, we're diving into the story of how one hotel used a whole lot of data to solve a multi-million-dollar pricing puzzle that was, for them, a matter of survival.
So, let's just start with the big question. Put yourself in these shoes. If you owned a hotel, how would you even begin to decide what to charge for a night?
You know, your mind probably jumps to the obvious stuff, right? A room with a killer view costs more. A hotel right in the middle of the city gets a higher price tag, or maybe it's all about the perks, like a brand new gym or a swimming pool. And yeah, those things seem logical, but it's rarely ever that simple.
And for the hotel in our story, the stakes couldn't have been higher. We're talking about a family-owned ancestral hotel way up in the Swiss Alps. For them, getting the price right wasn't just about making more money, it was literally about keeping the doors open.
So, welcome to the Château de Montana, a boutique hotel in the gorgeous ski resort of Crans-Montana, Switzerland. Its owner, Nicolas Dupont, inherited the place, but he was facing a massive problem. The hotel was getting old, and the rates he was charging were just too low to keep the business alive. He knew he needed to make a radical change.
So, here was his plan, and it was ambitious. He needed to dramatically increase his average daily rate, or ADR. We're talking more than doubling his prices in some cases. But you can't just slap a new price on the door and hope for the best. To justify that kind of hike, he had to completely renovate and reposition the entire hotel.
And this slide really shows you just how big that gap was. I mean, look at this. In the low season, he's pulling in 140 Swiss francs, and he needs to get to 250. In the high season, he's barely hitting 230 and needs to reach up to 400. That is a massive leap. So the real question becomes, how on earth do you build a hotel that people will actually believe is worth that much? So Dupont put together a game plan. He'd add all those popular wellness amenities like a gym and something called a wet zone. He had to decide between a classic, cozy Swiss chalet style or a sleek, modern design. He'd add a high-end restaurant, and here's a curveball. He planned to remove things he thought guests didn't really care about anymore, like the minibar and free breakfast. Every single one of these decisions was a huge gamble.
Now, Dupont knew he couldn't just guess his way through this. He needed proof, some kind of evidence that his plan would actually work. So he hired two consultants, Olga Mitsireva and Yulia Bilapilska, to figure out if his target prices were even achievable.
Their strategy, at first, was totally logical. Textbook stuff. To figure out what a renovated Château de Montana could charge, they'd just look at what other, similar hotels in the area were charging. It's a classic comparables approach. Makes sense, right?
Well, not so fast. Their common sense approach immediately ran into a huge problem. It turns out, comparing hotels is a lot like comparing apples and oranges, and then throwing in some pineapples and mangoes just to make it extra confusing. And this table shows the problem perfectly. Take a look at Hotel C. It's the most expensive. But why? Is it the location by the lake? The wellness area? The pool? You just can't tell. And then you have Hotels A and B, which look almost identical on paper, but their prices are still different. With all these different variables, you can't isolate what exactly people are paying a premium for.
And this was the dead end. This was the crucial point. They couldn't go to Dupont and say, yes, if you add a gym, you can definitely charge 50 francs more, because the data from just a few hotels was a confusing mess. They had absolutely no confidence in their own conclusions.
This is where the story takes a really fascinating turn. Faced with this brick wall, the consultants realized they needed a completely different approach. They couldn't rely on just a handful of examples. They needed to think bigger, much, much bigger.
And this quote from Olga Meditera really captures that mindset shift perfectly. Instead of giving up because the small amount of data was confusing, she decided they just needed more data. They believed that somewhere, buried inside a massive data set, the answers had to be there. So they went from comparing just 3 hotels to collecting data from 194 hotels across the entire region. And this wasn't a quick search. They gathered every detail you can imagine: room rates, star ratings, location, room size, and a huge list of every possible amenity, from pools to pet-friendly policies.
But, having a mountain of data is one thing. Actually making sense of it is another thing entirely. They needed a special kind of tool. Something powerful enough to find the hidden patterns within all those 194 hotels. And they found one.
It's called hedonic regression. Now, that sounds super complicated, but the idea behind it is actually pretty simple. Think of it like a machine that can look at the total price of a hotel room and tell you exactly how much each individual feature, the gym, the location, the modern design, contributes to that final price. It basically puts a specific price tag on every single amenity.
So here's how they used it. Step 1, get all that data. Step 2, list out every single feature. Step 3, and this is the magic part, the regression model runs all the numbers and spits out the exact Swiss franc value for each feature. And finally, step 4, you can now build a hypothetical hotel, like the newly renovated Château de Montana, and predict its price by simply adding up the values of all the features you plan to include.
This was their moment of truth. They had the renovation plan from DuPont, they had the data from 194 hotels, and they had their powerful new tool. It was time to simulate the future and see if DuPont's dream was a data-driven reality or just a fantasy. So they plugged in the specs for the proposed renovation. A 4-star hotel in Crans, Montana, recently renovated, with a restaurant, a gym, and a wet zone, but no pool. They could even test whether a modern or a traditional style would command a higher price. Every single decision DuPont had made was now a number to be fed into this model.
So what did the model say? After crunching the data from 194 different hotels, the answer was yes. The simulation proved that with the right combination of renovations, the modern style, the wellness center, the restaurant, the target price of 400 francs wasn't just a dream, it was a data-backed reality. It just goes to show you that while common sense can get you started, the real confidence to make a multi-million-dollar decision often lies hidden, not in a few obvious examples, but in the patterns of a whole mountain of data.